Hello, welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, you can send questions and comments live on the YouTube chat tonight. Facebook, it's acting wonky again, so I'll get that fixed next time. I'll own that one. So you know me, John Ruark, screw-upper of Facebook. Also, past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1959. 1959? No. 1957. It's one of those nights. I'll get numbers right tonight, I promise. And let's see, and one of the hosts of the Masonic Roundtable. Let's go over to Jason, who can make the show only get better from here. Jason, how are you?
You want to just leave and come back in?
I fail at life. Don't turn 40, Jason.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's because you're 40. You've got the demon Tia. Anyway, Jason Richards, past master of Vacation Lodge number 16. I can remember my lodge's number in Clifton, Virginia. Member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821. See, that one had 4 numbers, and I got it in Washington, D.C.
Well, pin a rose on your nose. Robert, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys? Robert Johnson, past master Waukegan 78, sitting secretary at Space Novum Lodge, host of the Whence Came You Masonic podcast. Thanks, John.
Sweet. All right, so we have a skeleton crew tonight, but we're going to rock this show. Before we do, give a special shout out to the patrons who supported the show over the past year. Woo! Thank you very much. We've got a couple extra new things lined up for 2021, and so it's all thanks to all your support. If you want to keep this conversation and Masonic education going on for many years to come, head on over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable, chip in a few bucks, and we'll be glad to hang out with you in some private channels and just enjoy each other's company a little bit more intimately, especially in this almost 1 year anniversary of COVID. Can you believe it? It's crazy. So, let's see. Let's get right into tonight's topic. One that I've been have grown into over the past year. Really trying to dive down. I got really deep and introspective and stuff during COVID last year when I was like, well, if I got all this extra time home, I'm going to do more reading. The first couple months of COVID, everyone was like, well, I'm going to go learn a new skill and I'm going to learn how to bake, sourdough and all that. I don't know. But part of that was for me, just to do some more digging into faith, spirituality, religion, all that good stuff. And so one thing that evolved out of that was a little bit of finer appreciation for numerology. And specifically, we're going to talk about numbers writ large, both the literal, how do we get the numbering system, all the way up to divine numerology, sacred numerology, whatever you want to call it, and really how it intertwines and interplays with Freemasonry. So this is not going to be a course on numerology writ large, right? We're not going to hit every number and all its symbolic meanings because we don't have the time to cover, basically a 4-6 credit class in 1 hour. But hopefully you'll get inspired, find some things to jump off, and start digging down your own personal rabbit hole as you find out more and more about these. So probably the best place to start would be to talk about, like, how do we get numbers in the first place? Like, what is this whole number theory? Why do we have this system? Where did it come from? And then really that if you understand the foundation of that, then we can build on and learn more about the abstract concepts of what they mean. So Robert's going to start us off and really talk about where this whole number system came from.
So before we start with numbers, I have to do this.
Adjust your glasses. Nerd.
Yeah. So numbers and math really go together. Obviously, a brief history is what I'm going to give you, like a brief history of math and some of the amazing things that happen as we move through the ages. So we've got 40,000 years ago, we have hash marks on bones, tally marks. We then see this move through time, and Babylonians improved on this. Then the Egyptians improved on Babylonians. and the Greeks improved on these things. Around just bouncing around with some different characters, around 250 BCE, we have people like Archimedes who start thinking about numbers abstractly. So he uses polygons to like approximate pi, 3.14, on and on and on. But we look back at these numbers and we say, why do we even come up with these numbers? Like, to think about where numbers even come from is a really abstract concept itself. I've said it before on this show and other places. Like, to me, when I think about numbers, I go, it's so insane because there is infinite numbers between 1 and 2, but we just think about 1, 2, 3, 4, and we just somehow are able to not even think about everything in between. Every number. So when we're thinking about how numbers evolved through time in these counting systems, the Babylonians had, a cuneiform type of system that was a base 60 system. I'll talk about that in a second. But basically, triangles with sticks that come out of them, and each triangle represents a certain amount. And the thing is that these things of numbers, the cuneiform tablets would go on and on and on and on and on. It'd be so big to represent numbers. And so at a point, we said, well, we have this need to record quantifiable information. So do we give every number its own symbol? No, it's absolutely ridiculous. So you have the evolution of the numerical 10 system, which is what we use today. We use a base 10 system. That means 1 through 9 plus a 0 as a placeholder. Fun fact, everybody thinks that, the base 10 system, your numerals that we use today, everybody seems to think that it's an Arabic system. It's a Hindu Arabic system. It's a blend of the two. I'll talk about that in a minute as well. So a base 10 system, 1 through 9 plus the 0. The base 60 is a Babylonian system. They counted in 60s. So this is the Sumerians. And this is still used today when we calculate time. It's also still used when we calculate degrees, for instance, degrees in a circle. And even their calendar, the Babylonian calendar, is a 360-day calendar to represent the circle. Right around the first millennium BC in Mesoamerica, they develop independently a base 20 system. And the base 20 system is all around the world also. So this happens in Europe and other places, but the base 20 system is evolved because we have to count from our hands and our toes. So we use our and what's really interesting about this is there's still remnants of this today in language. So even though the entire world has gone from a base 20 to a base 10 system, and then the adoption of the 0 is okay to use, the use of a Hindu system of new numbers, which is then later enhanced by the Arabic system. And yet in French, the number 80, if you say it, is composed of words that mean 4 times 20. So, I mean, this base 20 still exists in language and things. So around 500 BC, this is when that Hindu-Arabic system really takes a hold and continues and takes off. But it's still like a hash mark system. So then somewhere around 9th century, this is when Arab scholars adopt it. These Arab mathematicians who punted the football of mathematics down the field, these guys took off. And they did this, they improved on the system, and that's why we have the system we have today. So it's a base Hindu system that's improved by the Arab mathematicians later on in like the 9th century. But all through this, there's still like these kind of mystical concepts that are related in mathematics every once in a while. A lot of these mathematicians are also, you look back and they're philosophers. They're, these great thinkers of the day. For instance, look
enlightened
at Plato's
priests.
That's right. Exactly. Plato in his Republic talks about Pythagoras's transmigration of souls, which deals with numbers. So you start to get this mystical element that connects with numbers. In the 5th century, we have so a lot of times people go, "Oh, did you invent this system of numbers? Who invented this? Who invented this?" And this concept of inventing a mathematics or whatever, it's not really an invention, right? And the way I would describe it probably best is through the Hippasus. He's a Greek scholar, 5th century, who identifies, right? That's probably the best way we can describe the way we use mathematics today. We identify a new system of doing something. We identify a pattern or
Because it's always been there.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. We're discovering it. We're not inventing it.
Like, oh my gosh, so he identifies the first irrational numbers. So anybody who's not really familiar with irrational numbers, I'm not going to give you a math lesson, but I'll tell you.
You just can't reason with them.
It's correct. You can't. They are just absolutely ridiculous. Ask your smart speaker to give you the square root of 2, and you will get a number that goes on after a point into infinity. So like pi is an irrational number. It goes on into infinity, and it's an unpredictable number of strings. So consequently, these numbers became special because other numbers were irrational, like 3, like 5, like 7. But don't get too excited because 6 is also an irrational number. But these go on into infinity. Right around 598 CE, you have a guy, Brahmagupta, who basically, he's born in 598, and he makes the 0 a thing worth using. He makes it a number. And up to this point, zeros were kind of used. Sometimes they weren't used, but not always, right? And so then 0 is really starting to become a thing.
Yeah, but this is all the way up to like 600 and some CE.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not. It's a new invention in the time period of man. Mm-hmm.
That's right. 0 as a number and not a concept. This is so when 0 becomes a number to quantify information by, it starts to change everything. And then moving forward, you start getting to really abstract concepts and even philosophy, Aristotelian arguments. Like all of this boils down into math and numbers. And so it's
really the first time you're quantifying an absence of something, as opposed to actually quantifying something. And that was right. A revolutionary concept.
Yep. And so this brings us, you can go from that point, and now just think about every History Channel special you ever watched with all of your geniuses just piling on top of this foundation of numbers and mathematics. And what comes along with it is philosophy. And then that philosophy gives way to what we would consider ineffable things, ineffable ideas. That is, things that cannot be known. And it just gets born from there. There's really in my book never been an amazing mathematician who also wasn't some sort of amazing philosopher, some sort of amazing scholar in terms of humanity and understanding it and these kinds of things. So there's your,
that's where we got numbers.
That's where numbers come from.
So then we have the fun thing of now laying on more than just mathematic principles, like what is the meaning of a number, right? And that's where it gets fun and exciting for people who like to kind of think about these abstract concepts. So why don't we start with the number 0 and really build up from there. And we're not going to cover every single number or number system, but at least we're going to hit some highlights that we found in our research. So go ahead, Robert. 0.
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, zero becomes this concept. It's always been a concept first. It was the absence of something. And what Brahmagupta did was he gave us rules for calculating with zero. Remember this, because I'll hit it again in a minute. But Bill Gates is quoted as saying, "Zero is the most magical number we know, and we're always heading toward it." So in ancient Babylon, they don't have a zero. They kind of represent a zero with this blank space between tables. Egypt has like no way to represent zero, that or rather the idea of not or not. But the Maya in South America essentially, in my mind, give us some of the first kind of esoteric meanings of number. So the Maya used a spiral to represent the zero, and this also in their culture equates to a womb, a shell, or a fetal beginning. It represents a blank space of infinity that like life can spring forth out of, or it represents complete potential. Everything that could ever be is in the zero. And so this is like this totally fascinating idea that never goes away. For instance, in the tarot, the Fool card, we use it there. The Fool is given as the zero. It's because the Fool is said to, and again, the tarot is not a great example here because it's so fluid and it means different things to different people. But in the recognized kind of school of tarot, spontaneous, innocence, the idea of being free, the word potential.
Blank slate, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this represents the idea that anything is possible because you're about to do the thing, or it's experiential. Interestingly enough, in my own personal life, zero equates to my bank account. Just kidding. As far as I know, in Gematria, there is no zero. In fact, some of the research that I was actually doing a little bit before the show here, and I came across something where they were talking about in Hebrew, there's no zero. There's just kind of the idea of nil or abstract concepts of nothing, which is interesting still because in things like Kabbalah, there's ideas of the 0 point or the Ein Sof, which, above the Kabbalistic tree. But then in my world, where I think about a lot of these things and how it relates in practical sciences, I think about, Bohmian mechanics, where we're talking about the implicate order, which is essentially, imagine the cloud, where anything can happen before somehow potential makes it come down and manifest. It relates to Brahman, so the zero can be the Om, which is the sound of the creation. It's just a special number that relates to infinite potential, really. It's everything, it's nothing. So it's a really great concept in my mind as something to contemplate all the time. One of the neat things about it there's a book I have on the shelf back there. I think it's Ancient Near East, or the Middle East, Ancient Near East. Yeah, I think that's it. Anyway, it's from like 1980s, and in it there's a line that says something like, 1 is 1, 2 is 2, and you count up right with this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then we add the 0 to the 1 because now that system is complete, that cycle is complete. And you're starting at the 0 potential again before counting further. So it's kind of this idea that is a continual cyclical cycle that builds on itself. And Aleister Crowley says, a man becomes all when he becomes 0. Now go back to what Bill Gates said. It's magical, and we're always heading toward it. Is Bill a Crowley fan? I don't know.
As soon as he puts the microchips in your vaccinations, yes.
Don't do that.
Don't do that on a Freemasons channel. Come on, man.
Yeah, that's zero.
It's a good way to get us demonetized.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a really good setup about the infinite potential from a zero, because the immediate thing right after that is one, right? It is something. There's not a lot of symbology behind like the literal, like from there was nothing and then there's something. It's the singular point. It's the beginning of one. In a monotheistic kind of world, you get the one, right? You get concepts of Neoplatonism and the one. You get the Gnostic influence, or you just get there's God, the God. So that's the symbology behind the number one. Not much more to it than that, which then leads you into, if not one, then two. You have another pair of one. 1 + 1 is now 2. It's a little bit more exciting because now you have a duopoly. You have polar opposites, right? So now you have the concepts of light and dark. You have the concepts of a checkerboard pavement, right? That you have light squares and dark squares as you travel throughout the world. You have concepts of duality, where life isn't always as it seems. That there's highs and lows in life, and that's the philosophical lesson to take from that. That there's always going to be good things, and there's always going to be bad things. There's always going to be good. There's always going to be evil in the world. This is represented in symbology through the dyad, and then you also have, again, this concept of polarity, positive and negative, which actually comes into pretty good detail once you start looking at what's in between. So the concept of positive and negative, you may see that represented as the like the yin and yang symbol, right? If you're familiar with that swoosh kind of black and white symbol, those who study the yin and yang symbol actually say there is a third element in there, and that is the line between them, right? So it's not so much you're talking about the light and the dark in the world. You're actually talking about the union of those two. So it's 2.0001 if you want to think of it that way. But that concept of the polar opposites and then some balance or unity in the middle is actually a really critical resolution, harmony, is a really critical aspect of understanding to get to the point of number 3. So let's talk about the number 3 from now on. So I've done a lot of like one of my presentations is on like numbers and kind of trying to tie these things all together. But if you look at something as simple as the Trinity, right? This is where a lot of this concept of the Trinity comes from. You have a positive, a negative, or a masculine and a feminine, and then you have this balance in the middle. This is where you'll see things show up as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, or the Father, the Son, and the Divine Mother. And so you'll have a masculine, a feminine, and then some balance between the two. You'll see this in like the Trimurti of the 3 forms in the triple deity of Hinduism, right? Where you have Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer. Creator, destroyer, and then you have Vishnu as harmony between those 3. There's a ton of other different examples of that. Another thing I want to add too, with the masculine and feminine, from a philosophical standpoint, you also have like if it's not the Divine Mother, it's also Sophia, like wisdom. So you have the Divine Feminine, Divine Masculine, and then the Son.
One of the things you're referencing, John, is the law of the ternary, which essentially is a way we formulate actions and reactions. And you have the one, which is an active force acting on other things. You have the second, which is the passive force that is being acted upon, and then the third is the
Right.
resolution of the two. So when you look at the active being the male, one representing the male, the passive being the female, or two, and then you have the third, which is essentially the neutral or the resolution of the two, which is the
Yeah.
child. You can see that with the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit,
Mhm.
light, darkness, twilight. It's just very, very interesting how the entire world revolves around the first three numbers of an actor, someone being acted upon, and then the resolution of those actions.
Yeah, in alchemy, you have that same concept as well. We've seen, if you're familiar with the kind of the alchemical process, you have sulfur, salt, and mercury. Sulfur being an active principle, salt being a passive principle, and Mercury, or Hermes, right there as the neutral balance principle of all things. So that's another kind of neat thing. And then we could take, and then we also have the. Let's look at the three principal officers of Masonic Lodge. You have the Worshipful Master, the Senior Warden, and the Junior Warden. And usually there's one officer to the complete opposite of the room of the Worshipful Master, and then there's one that's in the middle. Right. So it's the active, the passive, and the balance. And then finally, just to kind of wrap up number 3, you have the 3 principal pillars of the Kabbalistic tree of life as well, right? And so you have an active pillar, you have a passive pillar, and then you have this pillar of beauty. Sound familiar? In the middle, that balances strength and wisdom. So that's something that it all comes together when you tie all these principles
it
together.
It also balances top to bottom there too.
Say more.
Yeah. Oh no, just because it's the sun.
Yes. Well, that's true. So anything else with the number 3 before we move on to the next section?
So not to give away any spoilers, but the law of the ternary also leads to the composition of the quaternary, which is you have those 3 actions, the active, the passive, and the resolution, and then you have the unity, which is 4, which contains the 3. So when you look at father, mother, and child, family is the 4th thing that contains the other 3, which is
I haven't even thought of it that way. Yeah. Oh, and from a biblical perspective, I can't believe.
You haven't read this book.
Yes, I have not. But I mean, if you're just looking at 3 in a biblical context, I mean, geez, you have the 3 days that Jesus was dead until resurrected. You had Jonah in the whale for 3 days. You have a lot of festivals and feasts that went on for 3 days. And so, I mean, this is a very common theme throughout the Jewish Bible, into the New Testament as well. So it's all kind of one big story arc when you look at it that way. Let's jump ahead for fun. If we have time, we'll go back. I want to hear more about the number 7, Jason, because again, when you're looking at biblical numerology, G7 comes up quite a bit. So let's talk about 7. Skip ahead. And you're muted right now, so let's see if we can get that fixed.
So when I give my lecture on Noah in comparative flood mythology, I end up talking about 7 quite a bit because it comes up in flood mythologies all throughout the ancient world. And the fact is that 7 is a number that has typically represented, at least in antiquity, completeness and perfection, both from the physical and spiritual sense. And this comes about because, in part, there was the order of the Pythagoreans who believed that the sum of the spiritual and the material actually added up to 7, the spiritual being 3 and the material being 4, and the addition of those two being emblematical of perfection, and in 7, and that kind of pervades throughout not only antiquity but also classical education, with the 7 liberal arts and sciences, the 3, or the spiritual, being grammar, rhetoric, and logic. Again, those which are the art of human communication. And then the material being the 4 of the quadrivium, with grammar, music, arithmetic, and astronomy. And those being relating to the material and the sciences world. Yeah, we have 7 distinct notes in the musical scale, and the 8th note up above is the perfect octave. So 7 is literally the completion of the musical scale, and anything above that just starts back over. The number 7 was is used all throughout the Bible, especially in the Old Testament. The Bible as a whole was originally divided into 7 major divisions: the Law, the Prophets, the Writings, the Gospels and Acts, the General Epistles, the Epistles of Paul, and the Book of Revelation. I've heard that the total number of originally inspired books was 49, or 7 times 7. But I've seen that a couple different places, but I haven't actually done research into what those original 7 times 7 books were. When you look at 7 being used in antiquity as well as in ancient religions, you can look at, again, the Old Testament and see that there are 7 days of creation. The Sabbath, which is the 7th day, is the day of rest for God. When Cain kills his brother Abel, God says that anyone who dares kill Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over. Noah is commanded to bring 2 of each sets of animals into the ark in one of the flood narratives. In the other one, Noah is commanded to bring 7 of the clean animals into the ark. You have Pharaoh's dream of 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine when he's working out things with Joseph. There's 7 days of the Feast of the Passover. King David has 7 older brothers. It goes. It's referenced. I believe it's referenced close to 300 times throughout the entire Bible, as far as the number 7 is concerned.
Yeah, I think another one that I caught recently was studying the book of John in preparation for the Advent season, this past Advent season, that there are 7 miracles of Jesus, as described by the author of the book of John. And so John, being a more philosophical book rather than a literal book, that was, I think, some of the commentaries on the Bible say that was specifically put there to show not only that he did 7 miracles, he could have done 70, but they specifically talked about 7 because it's a perfect number, and so it's setting up the perfection of Christ. So that's an interesting archetype and deliberate numerology in that one account of the Gospels. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have the 7 Noahide laws as well. It just pops up absolutely everywhere. And it's not just in Christianity and the Bible. In Hinduism, there are 7 chakras in the basic model used in a lot of Eastern traditions. There are 7 worlds in the universe and 7 seas in the world. And 7 gurus as well, all in Hinduism. When we get into Islam, there are 7 heavens and 7 hells. the naming ceremony for children is held on the seventh day of life. With Judaism as well, 7 is that beautiful number representing divine completion. You recite 7 blessings under the chuppah during a Jewish wedding ceremony. It pervades into astrology as well. 7 is the number of the classical planets. The Sun, Mercury, Venus, Moon, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. You have the Pleiades, which are known as the 7 sisters. And it's just really, really interesting to see. I think some of the research that I did mentions the number 7 as the world's favorite number, just because it is so pervasive.
It's everywhere.
Throughout all sorts of cultures.
Mm-hmm. Which is fascinating, right? Because you would think, as Robert set up, you had these base 20 systems, you have these base 10 systems, because we have 10 fingers and 10 toes. So that should have been, you would think 10 is a perfect number. In fact, in the base 10 or in 10 symbology, you do have it as completion, right? Complete set. 10 representing totality. You have 10 representing the 10 emanations in the book of Genesis, the 10 emanations of God, and God said, let there be this, and which that has then also inspired, you guessed it, the Kabbalistic system of the Sephiro. And so, when you have these Sephiro that are arranged on those 3 pillars we talked about earlier, then you actually have a system of start to finish, from ground to heaven to completion. And I think that's it's a neat corollary there with the number 10. So I was trying to figure out some more allusions or alliteration or sources in the base 10 system in the Bible, but I couldn't find a whole lot right off the top of my head. But what I could find is, back to you, Jason, a lot of the number 40. So 4 times 10. 40 shows up quite a bit as well. If it's not as much as 7, but it's pretty darn close, right?
Yes. Yeah. 40 shows up in the Bible quite a bit, and it doesn't have the same positive connotation that the number 7 does. In 40, or rather in the Bible and elsewhere, the number 40 is emblematical of combat or an ordeal or suffering. You see the rains coming down and the flood coming down in Genesis for 40 days and 40 nights. At least in one of the oral traditions in Genesis chapter 6 and 6 to 9 rather. You have Moses living in Egypt for 40 years. 40 years he and the Israelites were wandering through the desert. You have the temptation of Christ happening over the course of 40 days. Interestingly enough, the number 40 is often used to symbolize years when one generation is changed by another, and it's often accompanied by ordeals, because in the sense that, for an example, Jesus had foreseen through his crucifixion that the city of Jerusalem would fall, and 40 years after it, the Roman Empire burnt down, the Roman Empire burnt it down, 40 years after the crucifixion of Christ. So it's very, very interesting looking at the number 40 from a symbolical standpoint as being a trial or an ordeal, or just something that a protagonist has to go through and endure and come out stronger on the other side.
Yeah, did you cover the 40 days in the Ark as well? Right, because
I covered that it rained for 40 days and 40 nights.
and then didn't he wait another 40 days after the Rain Society, or was that 10 days? I can't remember. It's killing me because I just read it.
I can't remember the number. And the Genesis tradition of the flood is a combination of multiple oral traditions.
Pick your number.
Yeah, it's some might be an entire year. I'm not sure. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, well, when you were talking about Christ, and you talked about he's tempted by Satan for 40 days, but also he before he ascends, he is the 40 days, right, in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
So in that instance, it's like probably the most positive aspect, because now he's back and appearing before leaving.
Right. Yeah. Again, the completion of the trial. Yep. That's interesting.
Yep.
Let's see. I think we have a little bit more time left, so I think I'll actually go back. And since we talked about 40, let's go back to 4. Since we talked about 10, we talked about 40. 40 divided by 10 will give you 4. And which is actually a good foundation for all those other things, right? So you have 3, you have the perfect trinity. You have, all the active, passive, and neuter concepts that we talked about. But then now in 4, you actually have more foundational. Like when you get to the number 4, it's very solid, very firm. It's very rooted, grounded in like your tarot aspects. But then the earliest connotation to 4 was, or correspondence to 4 was the classical elements, right? You have earth, air, fire, and water, and those all had their early principles from a literal alchemy / science perspective, but then there's also became spiritual placeholders later as well of 4 modes or four schools of thought, which we'll get into in a minute. In the tarot, you have 4 suits, which also align to those 4 classical elements. So you have pentacles, coins, being the suit of material things, earthly things. So that's the coins go with earth. You have cups, which hold liquid, hold water. So cups and water are corresponded together, and so that is your emotional, your fluid aspects of life. Then you have swords, which cut through the air, and so it's a loose way of associating those two. But your swords align to the intellect. They align to the not emotional, but the more logical aspect of things. And then you have the wands. The wands made out of wood. They can be combustible. They can be associated with fire. So that is really like creativity, will, entrepreneurship, project management, and that kind of thing. So that's how those 4 align together. And another one of my favorites of symbolism for the meaning 4 is actually something that you may see in Royal Arch, which is the tetramorph. The tetramorph is a fancy word of saying the 4 living creatures that you would see on the what Ezekiel saw when he saw the animals coming throughout the wheel. And sort of we have the ox, the man, the eagle, and the lion. And so those show up in lots of different places. But they also have similar correspondences to the other 4 sets of 4 from alchemy and the tarot as well. Even in the tarot, you have like the world card actually has in the Rider-Waite system, the tetramorph in the corners, and even the 4 authors of the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are also supposed to be correlated with these different aspects of the tetramorph as well. So that's pretty fascinating, and because they all have different feelings to them, different points that the author's trying to make, which relate to that. But wait, there's more, because boom, there we go, Robert's got it. Bam, right in the Wheel of Fortune. you see that. You're muted, Robert, if you wanted to jump in and say something.
Sorry, yeah, here's the Boda deck, the 4 tetramorphs for John. I just had it handy. So.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. And then I've even done a presentation on the 4 worlds of the Kabbalistic system, which is really fascinating. If you want me to come and give it to your lodge, I'd love to. And so you can hear a little bit more about how those different levels of ascension correspond to the lodge, but also correspond to personal and intellectual and philosophical aspirations as well. Blah blah blah. It's really cool. You should check it out. So, so I think we'll probably start to wrap it up there, because again, we could go on and on and on about these all night. And so really the big final question that we want to have for everyone is, let's see, I won't pick a softball one like what's your favorite number, but what's why do you think we assign meanings to numbers, to our numbering system? Why do you think we try to add additional context throughout history or even personally today? Why do you think we add that onto the numbering system that we've discovered or came upon? So we'll start with Jason for his final thoughts on that point. Jason.
I think it comes down to trying to translate the concepts of the divine into something that our human brains can understand. And our human brains can most easily understand patterns and repeatability. Oh, I think I've seen this before. Where have I seen this before? Oh, yes. So to me, the existence of divine numerology, sacred numerology, whatever you want to call it, I think stems from the human brain just trying to recognize patterns in creation that leave the imprint of a design. So why do we assign things to numbers? Pattern recognition, because it's something that our human brains can understand and grasp as a way to translate the ineffable to something tangible.
Mm-hmm. I love it. All right, I would agree with you there as far as the we are creatures of habit. We look for patterns, right? That's why anything that has 2 dots and another one, you start to make a face out of it, right? Just because that's what we are hardwired to do. And so we'll do the same thing for numbers as well. Okay, over to you, Robert. Why do we assign meanings to numbers?
I think it's a conceptual flourish move. So, like, if you feel like you can control your world, that's one thing. But maybe you can't conceptualize how to do this. So it's like in Spaceballs when he says, I can't do it. And he says, Lone Star, the ring is Bupkis. The power is in you. So the idea here is that through time and history, you've got occultists or spiritual masters who probably don't need anything other than their own mind to conceptualize, visualize, and manifest. And so what we see is, in an occult standpoint, maybe somebody who isn't quite there yet uses a flourish. What do I mean by that? If you're a fan of anime, my son loves anime, and he's always running around and he'll do some goofy thing, right? Like Naruto or something. What if, the sign, what if that's a spiritual flourish? What if by feeling that this actually does something special increases its probability of actually manifesting the thing in which you believe it will do? You're charging it with a power. Is the objective reality, the objective belief that something does something, make it so. And so with numbers, very similar. only this is perhaps maybe for a different type of person, somebody who recognizes patterns, as we talked about, in a conscious way, and deals with things maybe not so physical, but more in a different capacity of recognition. So I constantly see the number 7. What does that mean? Well, if you assign concepts to these numbers, you're changing the way, and not just the way, but you're changing the frequency of how much you notice those numbers. And then by assigning them values, you say, that means this thing. And then essentially makes it so. So a conscious,
right,
a conceptualized type of pattern recognition to assist, at least in the numerology or in the occult space, a way to, derive meaning from seemingly randomness.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd absolutely agree. So, Robert, why don't you go on a tangent here and talk about a little project that we've been working on?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, I forgot this was like the wrap, right? So,
here we are.
2 days ago, you and I finished a great, awesome project that we started a little while ago. 18 days ahead of schedule, we finished. And so we launched it. John and I have been a fan of the book, The Master's Word, for a really long time. However, the only available options that you could have when you get out there into the world of online books are $500+ originals by George Plumer, which if you can get that, sweet, do it. However, there's a lot of antiquated language and things that might need some additional context. And so John and I decided to reformat that book, totally clean it up, and we would then take it, annotate the whole thing. So you might see words in there like the word Mesu, which you're like, what's that? Because Plumer doesn't tell you. So
just assumes you know.
Right, yeah, this is a book written in 1913, and a lot of the terms aren't readily available today unless you're off, tangent. So John and I basically footnoted everything, and we added a methodology to the entire thing, and like 2 new essays and a prologue and an epilogue in it. And it was a lot of fun, and it's finally out there, and it's on Kindle, it's on print book as well through Amazon, and it's awesome because if you order today, you'll get it before John and I do.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, they like to give those author copies the slow roll.
Yeah, take a little bit. So I would just say that it was an absolute awesome time to do it, and I got to share that. It was a good bonding time with John and I. It's a good project, and so I want to thank you, John, for all your hard work.
Love you, man.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else. Jason's in the room right now, and I really, really had to go through this book, and it took everything I had not to pull out my inner Jason and correct everything we could.
Just redline the whole book.
Well, because like I said, Plumer, he wrote in a weird style, and there are some run-on sentences, and it's wild. So I want to let everybody know we let Plumer speak for Plumer, and we just added content.
Yeah, he was about 2 commas shy of Albert Pike. So yeah.
The book is good. It's not all super spaced out or anything. The print copy has the annotations at the bottom of the page for you all, and it comes in at about 150 pages. And the Kindle version is about the same length, but it's awesome the way the annotations work there, because you just tap on it and it's a pop-up. It's really so. Yeah, that's
cool.
it. Hope you guys really enjoy it, and that's all I got.
Thanks. So yeah, I mean, just to add on that, I was really stoked going through this. Really a lot of good concepts in the book, especially one thing I wanted to bring up because it's related to this episode. He goes into the Trinity concept a ton in the book, where he talks about the body, soul, and the self. He talks about the word, the light, and the self. He really hits home this Trinitarian concept. Not Christian Trinitarian per se, but Trinitarian concepts throughout the entire book. So if you like philosophy, you like comparative religion, you like Christianity, a little bit of theosophy, I mean, all that stuff is packed in there. So it's not necessarily a Masonic book. It's got a little sprinkling of Masonic principles in there, but I think anyone who likes weird stuff will like it. So we know we did.
So Pluma wrote the book. He was a Mason. He was he was a Rosicrucian, and he basically said, while in the Rosicrucians, he and a couple of guys said, "Hey, it's not entirely cool to be have just a men's organization of Rosicrucianism." So they actually started SRIA, so the Societas Rosicrucia in America, which is a non-Masonic body, but started by a couple of people who were Masons even. And so it's really, he wrote the book as a Mason and as a Rosicrucian, but you don't have to be a Rosicrucian to understand it. And yeah, that book is chock full of number 3.
Yes, cool. All right, so final thought to me: why do we assign meanings to numbers? I've always found it to be interesting as you really dig through the history of how, at least the Bible, including the Old Testament, was put together from all the concept of the oral traditions that Jason mentioned. We have evidence that the authors who were putting the oral traditions together may have actually shaped the story to fit numerical significance as well. And so
No.
I'm just going to say it may have happened, possibly. So yeah, because they wanted to tell that story too. And so just like we talked about in the book of John and the 7 miracles, there's reasons that things flow the way they do, whether it's divine inspiration, God inspired, God breathed, or is it really good theologists who are trying to make sure that a story is conveyed. We have this whole system, this biblical system, that's inspired generations of people to think in terms of Trinity, 7 days, 40 years in the desert. So these numbers are imprinted on our traditions that we have. And so why do we assign meanings to them? Well, again, we see patterns in life, and then once we start to put them into our foundational texts, then they actually carry additional meaning everywhere you go. So it's kind of like the first time you have a big life-changing experience, not unlike Masonry, right? One of the big things that Masons will agree on is after they get their 3rd degree and really think about what that means, they think differently about the world. They approach the world just a little bit differently than they did before. It is that concept of initiation. And so we do the same with our number system as well, that numbers aren't just numbers until we start adding more meanings to them. So that's the long and short of it. We could talk all day and night about all the other numbers in the Bible and other sacred meanings behind those. We did an episode sort of on sacred geometry, which is also fun to do. Go back and check that out. Also, if you want to hear my presentation on finding symmetry between these different systems of numbers, you can look me up on, I think Robert has a site called MasonicInstruction.com, where you can find my author page, and I'll be glad to talk about the syncretic tablet or one on the 4 worlds of the Kabbalah. So that'd be great. Love to speak at your lodge, or their Zoom meeting, or if you're in South Carolina, not your Zoom meeting. So that would be great. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next week. Keep searching for more light. Have a good night.